Joshua 24, verse 14. This is Joshua's swan song. Joshua's 110 years old, and this is the last sermon he's going to preach to the people. So he's right in the middle of his talk right here in verse 14. Now therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river, that's speaking of the Euphrates River, and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. If it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. Underline this verse, one of the most famous verses in the whole Bible, one of the most famous phrases in history. You probably have it in your home. If you were to Google this, you're going to find a bunch of plaques with it written on it. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Then the people answered, far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For it is the Lord our God who brought us and our fathers up from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, and who did those great signs in our sight, and preserved us in all the way that we went, and among all the peoples through whom we passed. And the Lord drove out before us all the people, the Amorites who lived in the land. Therefore, because of that, we also will serve the Lord, for he is our God. But Joshua said to the people, you are not able to serve the Lord, for he is a holy God. He is a jealous God, and he will not forgive your transgressions or your sin. If you forsake the Lord and serve other foreign gods, then he will turn and do you harm and consume you after having done you good. And the people said to Joshua, no, but we will serve the Lord. Then Joshua said to the people, you are witnesses against yourself that you have chosen the Lord to serve him. And they said, we are witnesses. And he said, then put away your foreign gods that are among you and incline your heart to the Lord, the God of Israel. And the people said to Joshua, the Lord our God we will serve, and his voice we will obey. So Joshua made a covenant with the people that day and put in place statutes and rules for them at the city of Shechem. And Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God. And he took a large stone and he set it up there under a terebinth tree that was by the sanctuary of the Lord. And Joshua said to all the people, behold, this stone shall be a witness against us, for it has heard all the words of the Lord that he spoke to us. Therefore, it shall be a witness against you, lest you deal falsely with your God. So Joshua sent the people away, every man to his inheritance. So now, after 5 years of fighting in the land of Canaan, God has finally made good on his promise that he made to Abraham to give that land to Israel. Verse 29, and after these things, Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died, being 110 years old. And they buried him in his own inheritance at Timnath Serah, which is in the hill country of Ephraim, north of the mountains of Gaash. And Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua and had known all the works that the Lord had done for Israel. As for the bones of Joseph, remember Joseph, coat of many colors, slave down in Egypt? They took his bones when they left, Moses took his bones when they left Egypt. As for the bones of Joseph, which the people of Israel brought up from Egypt, they buried them at the city of Shechem, in the place of land that Jacob bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of money. It became an inheritance of the descendants of Joseph. And Eleazar the priest, the son of Aaron, died, and they buried him at Gibeah, the town of Phinehas his son, which had been given him in the hill country of Ephraim. Wow! We have reached the end. We've reached the end. Some of you guys didn't have children when we started this series, whatever it was, 19 weeks ago. And now we've come to the end. We've come to the end of Joshua, one of the most fantastic books in the Bible. If you've never read this book, I encourage you to sit down and read it. Joshua did some of the greatest miracles in the history of mankind. God moved in him and his life in miraculous ways. Joshua wasn't perfect. He's just like you and me. He had to get up every day. He had a tough life. He went to work every day. He had a wife. He had kids. He's a regular guy. But God did extraordinary things through him because he had a heart to serve God. And now we see him at the end. He knows he's going to die. This is literally his swan song. This is literally the last words out of his mouth. And we're going to find out what's important to Joshua this morning as we close our series. Number one, Joshua calls the people. Joshua calls the people. Throughout history, the city of Shechem had been a pagan worship center in Canaan where God had met Abraham hundreds of years before. Joshua called the whole nation there for a family meeting, as this was the place they had gathered years earlier after the defeat of the city of Ai. So about a couple months ago, I talked about Israel moving into the land of Canaan. They had crossed the Jordan. Can you pull me back a little bit? They had moved into the land of Canaan. And what had happened was, after they had crossed the Jordan, they came to Jericho, one of the most famous stories in the Bible. The walls of Jericho was a walled city. They would never get into it. God miraculously brought the walls down. They took Jericho. The next city is Ai. And so they went there thinking, we're going to roll this city. Because there was sin in the camp, they weren't able to take the city, but they eventually took it. And so after they defeated Ai, they are making a wedge in the middle of Canaan, because Ai and Jericho is about right in the middle of Canaan. They go to worship at the city of Shechem. And so this is where Shechem is on the map. So let me give you a little idea of where it is. Shechem is right in the middle of north and south and east and west. You see it there. It's in the tribal land of Manasseh. And you see the Mediterranean Sea there and the Jordan rivers, that little river that runs through the middle. Shechem is right in the middle of the land of Canaan, modern-day Israel. So this is where it is, and this is maybe what it looked like back in Joshua's day. It had a wall, it had a temple inside of it. Many pagan rituals were done here. The land of Canaan was being infiltrated by Israel because of their wickedness. They would sacrifice children inside of this temple. And so because of the wickedness of this land, God is sending his people Israel in to take over this land. And this is, the city of Shechem is one of the root towns where this was happening at. So this is possibly what it looks like today. And the temple there is the fortified foundations of it are still there to this day. You can visit it. These foundations date from the time of Abraham. So this even predates Joshua by hundreds of years. So it's possible that Joshua stood right in this temple and spoke out into the valley where all the nation is gathered. 1.5 million people come to hear the last words of Joshua. And it could have been right from this spot right here. Here's what Shechem looks like from an aerial map. You see Shechem, that's the ruins there of the temple right in the middle. And there's Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal. And you can see this whole valley opens up right in front of this temple. And so it's possible Joshua stood there and said the words of Joshua chapter 24. The thing I just read to you is the thing he just yelled out into the crowd. So you've got a whole nation gathered together to hear the last words of their leader. Special times of commitment call for special times or special places of committing. Special times of commitment call for special places of committing. So brides in here, I bet you probably remember where you got married. Now, maybe husbands don't, but brides always remember, because you can't, how many times bride-to-bes come and ask me, hey, where's a good place to get married in Temecula? Should I go to the beach? Should I get married at the vineyard? Do you guys have a place here at the church? I'm going to get married in dad's backyard or whatever. It's like brides want a place. In other words, nobody shows up, no bride goes, is there a public bathroom we could get married in anywhere around here? The Promenade Mall or something? Or like brides are like, no. This is going to be special. This is going to be a place that's meaningful. In fact, sometimes there are brides in this church who got a tattoo on their body of the coordinates of the place that they got married. Now that's commitment. Now here's my point. The point is that when you have a special thing, marriage is the greatest ceremony we do in our culture. It's the greatest ceremony. You spend the most money. It means the most. It's a young woman leaves her home to start her own family. A young man leaves his home to get married, to start their own family. It's the biggest celebration. It's the biggest event culturally that we have. And so watch, the place that happens matters because a bride remembers that place till the day she dies. And other big events that have happened in your life, you remember where those took place. Whether it was the time you threw up on the carpet and mom got mad at you, and you're like, you go back to your old, home where you grew up, and say it's 30 years later, you go to your high school graduation, you go back to that house. Say it's on a farm and it's all rickety place, but you remember it as being a mansion. But man, you go back there and it's like an outhouse. I can't even believe our whole family fit in this place. But you go through there and boom, there's the carpet you threw up on. And this is like 40 years ago. People are built for place. We're built for a place. We remember places where things took place, events in our lives. And this is exactly what Joshua's doing. Shechem's a big deal. Shechem is literally the spiritual heart of Canaan. And now that Israel's gone in there, Joshua brings the whole nation together to have a family meeting. During the covenant ceremony, Joshua retold the story of God's goodness and graciousness. So he's retelling their story, their history. God had fulfilled his promise of giving Israel a home. And though they had been rebellious, listen, believers should remember, retell, and reinforce the rule of God in their family to the younger generations. Ready? Listen to me. Parents, listen to what I'm saying. It's hard to be a parent, so let me help you. Okay? I just kicked my last out of the house. Last and only. I just sent Caleb to CBU. So now I'm an old, crusty, empty nester. Now it's just me and my wife staring at each other. But it's quiet and it's glorious at home. So I just sent Caleb off to CBU, okay? So I get it. We're done raising our kid. We've done parenting. Let me help you with this. Your kids will not absorb your walk with God. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to me. Your kids will not absorb your relationship with God. They will not absorb it. It cannot be absorbed. It's not a thing of osmosis. They don't sit around in your house and go, "Oh, I'm feeling godliness pouring into my life." Let me tell you how your kids will leave your house and still have a chance at following God. They have to hear you talk about God and they have to see you live for God. Everybody pay attention. Because you may have never gotten parenting advice in your life. Here's how you can get God into the heart of your child, whether they're 3 months old right now or they're 38 playing video games in the basement and you need to kick them out. Wherever they're at in that continuum. Your kids need to hear you talk about God. Like Joshua, you need to retell the story of God in your life. Hey, remember, sweetie, when we were living in that Winnebago and we were on the side of the road? We were literally homeless. And you tell it to your kids. Let me tell you something, Johnny. When me and your mom, you were born in the back of a Winnebago because we couldn't even afford health insurance to have you born in a hospital. We were dirt poor. We were stuck on the side of a road. And I didn't think we'd ever own our own home. I didn't even think we'd move into an apartment. We couldn't afford jack. But I tell you one thing, the goodness of God was poured out to us, son. God brought us from nothing into something. And I'm going to tell you something, it wasn't because of what Dad did that made this happen. It was because of what God did in our lives. Don't you ever take credit for what God has done in your life in front of your kids. Because you haven't done jack to help your life move forward. It's all been the grace of God. Do you have to get up and go to work and earn a living? Yeah, you do. Is the house going to clean itself? Nope, you're going to have to clean it. But here's my point. You didn't give yourself health. You didn't give yourself the ability to get out of bed. You didn't give yourself intelligence level to be able to do your job or go to school or whatever, or make those right investments online or whatever. You do nothing. It's the grace of God poured out to you. You didn't sign up for intelligence. You didn't sign up for your looks or your abilities or your athletic prowess or whatever you've got. You may have tremendous gifts, but understand it's a gift. And in front of your kids, you don't ever take responsibility for stuff you did. You always go, you know the reason we live the way we live? You know the reason you're eating that food, that hot dog right now from Hot Dog on a Stick, Johnny? You know the reason Dad can afford a $6 hot dog at the mall? Which is obscenely expensive, but so good. You want to know why? Now, Dad works hard. but everything I've got is a gift from God. And immediately your kid goes, oh, now I see Dad works 60 hours a week, but he's given credit to God. So your kids have to hear you talk about the goodness of God, and they have to see you live out what you're saying. Nothing is worse than to have a kid go, oh, Dad's one thing on Sunday morning, he dresses himself up and shaves and looks whatever, but every other evening during the week, he's drunk beating my mom. Nothing's worse than hypocrisy. I'm not saying you have to be perfect. What I am saying is you got to show an effort to your kids. And when you screw up, just admit it to your kids. I screwed up. I was wrong. Sorry. Be humble. Because your teenage kids aren't fooled. They may have been fooled when they're 7, but not when they're 17. Just go, I screwed up. I was wrong when I was younger, blah, 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 blah. I did all these things. I was an alcoholic. I'm trying to get control of my life, blah, blah, blah. Just admit it to your kids. They already know anyway. But don't do this. Don't do, we're going to play church on Sunday, but I'm not going to live that way during the week. That's the first way to be able to destroy your kids' walk with God, because they go, God's not even real. I'll tell you how they're going to know God's real. You keep telling the story of God all the time. Keep giving glory to God, and then you live it out at home. Those two simple ways is the way that you show how your kids can walk with God. So when they leave your home and they go to college, they don't train wreck their lives. But they go, you know what? Mom and Dad weren't perfect, but man, they tried to live for God. And I think God might be real. Joshua right here retells their whole history. Every time you're with your kids, tell them your history. And they're going to go, Dad, we've heard this story before. Shut up, because I'm going to tell you again. I'm going to tell you how awesome God is. So shut your mouth. Dad, I could tell the story. Okay, you tell me then. And then you've won the battle. Because now it's that deeply ingrained in their head. You know what? My son, who's 18, I sent him off to college. Guess what? He's been a PK his whole life, pastor's kid. And you know, the number one thing I didn't want from him was to hate God when he left my home. And you go, how can a pastor's son hate God? I'll tell you how, is when pastors don't live at home what they preach on a stage. So I tell you, I've known plenty of pastors' kids in my own life who are now my age who don't even go to church, don't even believe in God, and they grew up in a church. How can that be? I'll tell you how that is. It's because the pastors didn't talk about the goodness of God at home in their own homes, and they didn't give credit to God for what God is doing, and number 2, they didn't live it out. Let me give you something super simple. Super simple. If you're like, this is all brand new to me, I don't even know how it's too late. My kids are already teenagers. It's never too late. Here's how you do it. Take the first simple step. You give glory to God when you sit down and eat every single time, whether you're in the Promenade Mall or you're at home around your table, whatever. When you do family meetings, when people are around, give glory to God. God, I know this food sits here not because I work for it, but because you allowed me to work for it to make this food happen. We live in this beautiful home. We're in this beautiful place because Jesus, you gave this to us. And your kids immediately will go, okay, Dad's focus is on something besides his job or himself. Or mom or whoever, if you got a single mom, whatever it is. You sit down, and your kids go, Mom, you've never prayed in your whole life. Well, I'm starting now. Sit your butt down. And you go, I don't even know how to pray. All you do is thank God for the things you've been given. It's not impossible. You can do it. You can totally do it. You can start today. After this service, when you go to lunch at In-N-Out or wherever you go, stop. We're going to pray for this food. We're going to thank God for what he's done. Immediately, what that does, it takes a shift off of just this food you're eating or that you made it and brings focus back on who it belongs to, which is the goodness of God. Everybody with me? Yes. That's how you parent. That's how you parent. It's not impossible. You can do it. You don't have to be perfect. Talk about the goodness of God and live God out in your daily life. And it's super simple things. Pray for your food. Thank God every single time. And that's what Joshua does. He has a family meeting. Anybody ever had family meetings? Oh, dude, I hated those. My dad, I can remember, because I had a room in the basement. My sisters were upstairs where it was nice. I'm still not bitter, but it's fine. And I can remember my dad yelling throughout the house, family meeting, family meeting. Family meeting, everybody in the kitchen in 2 minutes, right now. And I'm like, my sisters are already running to the kitchen table because they always listened. And because I was ADD before ADD was cool, there was no medication for me. I just learned how to control my ADD through the power of Dad's belt, is how that happened. So I'd finally get to the table and Dad would sit down with everybody and go, I knew who the leader was. It was Dad. And that leader is going to tell us now how his home's going to run. So he'd go, there's a family meeting. So here's the deal. Here's how we're going to do this from now on. And it was usually something I did because I screwed up. I screwed up the whole family. So now he had to make new rules because of something I did for the whole family. So my sisters are like, I don't do that stuff anyway, so it doesn't matter. But he had to make new rules for everyone. So I just remember we had a family meeting. Dad goes, here's the way this is going to be. Boom, shakalaka, done. Everybody okay? And at the end of this meeting, we go, yeah, Dad. Okay, everybody go. And it was like a sergeant going, everybody get out of here and go live your lives, but make sure you follow my rules. And that's what Joshua does here. I'm the leader. God's blessed me to be the leader of this nation. I'm going to die. I'm going to tell you guys one last time about the goodness of God. And he retells the whole story with the whole nation gathered together for this family meeting at Shechem. He calls everybody together and he reiterates the goodness of God. Josh could go, are you serious? You think you're better than me? Who in here has stopped the sun? That'd be 0 people. I have. I've stopped the sun. Who stopped the Jordan to bring a whole nation over? Anybody else here? Nope, no one? Oh, I have. Who else is awesome like me? That'd be no one. See, that could have been Joshua's swan song. That could have been Joshua's like, is anybody better than me here? Actually, there's not. I'm the big cat. But you know what he does? Man, he deflects all glory back to God. There isn't one hint of like, check me out. There's like, check out what God's done. And that's how you want to end your life. Not going, look at all these things I did. Because who cares what you do? 5 minutes after you're dead, no one's going to care. But I tell you what they will care about is how you live for God. And that's exactly what Joshua does, and I love that. He did some of the greatest miracles in the history of mankind. And there's not one hint of like, check me out. That's awesome. That's awesome humility. Number 1, Joshua calls the people. They have a family meeting. Number 2, the people covenant with God. So what happens at this family meeting? The people are going to covenant with God. They're going to make a decision to follow God. The nation of Israel knew that God had rescued them from slavery in Egypt and took them through wars to teach them to trust him. Looking back, they saw the wisdom of God in the difficulty. Listen to me, ready? Especially those of you guys that are going through a tough time. Listen. The greatest growth often happens in the greatest discomfort. Look at me. If the person next to you is sleeping, elbow them in the face, tell them to wake up, because I'm ready to drop some knowledge into your life. Ready? The greatest growth doesn't happen in comfort. The greatest growth often happens in discomfort. Here's what that looks like. It's one thing to say, dude, I need to get in shape. I'm so out of shape. I know round is a shape, but man, I don't want this shape, right? So you sit down on your couch and you go, I really need to get in shape. And you grab a box of Oreos and you start watching people working out on TV. Like that Peloton commercial with that totally ripped chick, and she's like getting on that bike and she's going nuts. She's sweating and the kids are on her like going, yay, Mom, you're the best. She's like going up the hill and you're sitting there going, wow, you are a good biker. And wouldn't it be great if somebody else's work could make you fit? Like you just see people working out and they're just getting ripped and you just feel your muscles going, whoa, I'm watching you and my biceps are massive. Or I'm watching this woman ride this bike and all of a sudden my legs have slimmed down. I'm totally in shape. I just can't believe it. I just watched her on video and I'm totally in shape. Nope. You want to know what? In comfort, you go this way. In discomfort, you go. You ride the bike. Why do you ride the bike into discomfort? Because your body needs to feel discomfort to get to where you want to go in life. You want to lose weight? You got to be discomfort. You want to build muscles? You got to hurt them to get them to build up. It's a fact of your physical body and it's a fact of your spiritual body. You want to know why God will put you in difficult financial situations or difficult relational situations? He's like, why is this person even in my life? I can tell you why. Because you never learn to trust God in comfort. You never get in shape eating Oreos on the couch, Netflix and chill. Oh, you want to get in shape? Okay, well, it's going to hurt a little bit. You're like, I don't really want to do that. Okay, then sit on your couch. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have, I'm going to get in shape and be comfortable. Same thing spiritually. Right here, the nation goes, hey, we were slaves in Egypt. God did a miracle pulling us out, but guess what? We still had to go fight. Why did God send us to war? Because nothing teaches you to have faith in God until you're uncomfortable. And God will put you in an uncomfortable situation to teach you who you really trust. When you're comfortable, you trust self. When you're uncomfortable, you got to turn to God. So God will teach you through discomfort to trust him. And that's exactly what the nation discovers. Hey, we were brought out of Egypt miraculously, but we still had to go to war. Why would God do that? Why wouldn't God just fight all our wars for us? Because we have to learn to fight, number one, and we have to learn to trust God. For the believer, the path to victory is not free of conflict, but full of God. Woo! Look at that. Ready? The path to victory in your life is not being free of conflict, but being full of God. You'll have wars you'll have to go fight. But knowing God, he will get you through those wars. Hearing of God's love and faithfulness, the nation committed to follow God and obey him. Listen to me. True appreciation leads to true submission. Hey, do you really appreciate God, what he's done in your life? Then why don't you follow him? Because listen to me, your behavior changes based on how you appreciate things. Let's say you're 60 grand in debt. You got a Visa bill that's $60,000, which some of us do. And to pay that thing off every month at 29% is like $800 a month. And you wake up with anxiety in your stomach. And you're like, God, it's like a freight train laying on my shoulders. I'm never gonna get out of debt. I'm sick every day about this. And all of a sudden, your Aunt Gertrude goes, you know what? The Lord laid on my heart to drop you a 60 grand check. Jesus, in heaven, you're real. All of a sudden, you get this check in the mail. It's for $60,000 for your Visa bill. And you pay off your Visa bill. And you're like, I can't even believe it. This is like a dream come true. And guess what? The next time you talk to Gertrude, or you email her, or get on the phone, and you go, Gertrude, how can I help you? Do you need a meal? Mow your lawn? Clip your toenails? What do you need me to do? That gnarly right toe you got thing, I'll clip that thing up. I'll lick your toe clean or whatever. Okay, maybe not for 60 grand, but what I'm saying is, man, when you appreciate stuff, it changes your behavior. Everybody with me? The more you appreciate something about somebody or something, man, the more you want to help that other person or thing. You love your country, you'll go to war for it. You love your business, you're going to work longer hours even if you don't get paid because you love your business. Love the place you work. You love your church, you'll help out and serve. It's like the places you love and appreciate, you want to do something for. And Israel's like, man, God has done everything for us. How can we serve him? It wasn't about even Israel. It was about them saying, we want to serve God as a nation. Number 3, Joshua completes his race. We've come to the end. We've come to the end of our series. We've come to the end of Joshua's life. Joshua calls the people for a family meeting, and they talk about the good, and he talks about the goodness of God. It wasn't about Joshua, it was about God working in the lives of people. Number 2, the people covenant with God. They hear about the good things of God. They're like, we appreciate God so much, we're going to obey. And lastly, Joshua completes his race. If Caleb and Joshua were the 2 oldest guys in the nation. They were the original slave generation, the only 2 guys that made it into the promised land from the original slave generation. Not even Moses made it. If Caleb was already dead, because we don't know how Caleb died, Joshua was the last man who came out of Egypt and had seen everything God did for Israel. Joshua was literally the last man standing at 110 years old. At 110 years old, he was about to die, but encouraged the people that God would be with them. Listen to me, ready? You can't keep from dying, but you can keep from living a worthless life. Ready? Everybody look at me. Look at me. Look at me. You're going to die. You're going to die. It's a guarantee. You're heading there right now as you actually listen to me. You're online listening to me wherever you're at in the world. You're dying as we speak. It's not a morbid thought, it's just a factual thought. And here's my point to you as your pastor, because I love you. You will die, you will not escape. You're going there. What will your life have been about on the day you die? As your last breath, so this is Joshua's last breath is, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. These are his famous last words. Some of the most famous words in the Bible come from Joshua. Literally, people, I have this in my house. You come visit me in my house, it's up on the wall. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And this is a 3,000-year-old statement from a guy that was dying. On the day you die, what's the last thing you would say that means something? When your family visits you at Temecula Valley Hospital and you're going to die, or you get into a car accident and you're laying on the side of the road and the EMTs are around you, your family's around you, and you feel your life leaving you. With your last breath, what are you saying? Because oftentimes, your last breath tells about how you've spent the whole rest of your breaths. How you are at the end is a reflection of how you've been your whole life. And I love this with Joshua. Could have taken it all for himself. He reflects all back to God. Listen, be devoted during the dash of your life. Know what is important at the end and live your life backwards. So watch. If you know that living for God, you're going to go see God when you die. Post-death, you're going to see the God that made you. And he's going to hold you accountable for the ways that you've lived your life. If you know that's true, then before you get to that point, you live your life backwards. So that as you move forward through your life, when you hit the day of death, you will have lived your life with the right end in mind. Why? Because you knew what was true at the end, and you live your life backwards. Many of us live our lives, we don't even care. But that's the wrong way to live your life. Live your life on purpose and live it for God. Look at this tombstone. I love Leonard Ravenhill's tombstone. Are the things you are living for worth Christ dying for? Guess what? God didn't die for your money. You can always make more money. When you die, you don't take it. The clothes you wear, the things that you care about, your haircut or whatever, those have some level of importance, but they don't have the importance of living for God. Look at this. He has a birth date in 1907. Look at the dash in between. That's your life. You don't have a death date yet. You have a dash. What are you doing with your dash? What are you doing right now to live for God? Because you're heading to that second number. All of us head to that second number. But guess what? We can't choose what will happen in that second number, but you can choose what happens during the dash. What are you doing with your dash? You have one dash. Reincarnation isn't real. You will never be back here. You're not coming back. This is your one chance to live your one life for God. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to devote yourself to the things of God. You have to be a woman of God. You have to be a man of God in how you live your life, in how you act, in how you speak, in how you are on Twitter. Everything about you has to be infused with the love of God. Why? Because when that second date comes, when you see God face to face, everything that you've done during your dash will matter. What are you doing with your dash? Joshua's dash was, I live for God. And literally with his last breath, he said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Even after I die, my family will keep on living for God. Joshua wasn't perfect, just like me and you, had tough times. But he strove to live for God. You have one dash. How are you going to live it? This is Todd Beamer. Some of you guys might know him, those of us that are a little older. He was on Flight United 93 on the day of the terrorist attacks. And he's on the plane, and Islamic terrorists took box cutters out. And the reason you can't get into the cockpit today is for this reason right here, is they kicked the door down, which previous to 9/11 was hardly even anything. It was just like a fiber door. They kicked the door down, took the box cutters, slashed the pilots' throats, and left them on the floor, and they took control of the plane. Todd, who was a Christian guy, going to a business meeting, realizes what's happening. And he gets on the phone that's in the seat in front of him. And he makes a call. And because the terrorist attacks had already happened, all calls were being routed to a central location. And he's talking to an operator. And he goes, I think we were just hijacked. And she told him, she goes, well, 2 planes have just flown into the Twin Towers. And he realized at that time that he was a dead man flying. He realized, I'm not getting off this plane alive. I'm going to die. Imagine being on the phone going, I was going to a business meeting to try to make some money, and literally I'm not getting off this plane alive. Todd goes, okay, and the FBI's listening in on this phone call. They're listening in on all the phone calls from the planes. And he sets the phone down, realizes they're going to try to fly this plane into innocent people's lives and try to destroy people. They're going to use the plane as a bomb, like they had with the Twin Towers. And so he gets some of the other men of the plane, and they're over the phone, you can hear them devising a plan to go try to retake the plane. And the very last words after he got a bunch of guys together to go do it, he says this, are you guys ready? Let's roll. And here's a Christian man who I planted a church with a guy that was in his small group. And he did his funeral, the guy I planted a church with. And he was telling me these stories, it was his wife. And so he's telling me the story of what a stud Christian guy this was. And this isn't the way he wanted to die. But we don't get to choose the way we want to die. It just depends on how we're going to end our lives. How in that day of death, what's the last thing that's going to be important to us? And his last important thing was, let me go try to save some other people's lives. I can't save my life, but I'm going to try to save other innocent people's lives. And you know what they did? They broke into the cockpit, and there's a struggle. You can hear it over on the black box, that they're fighting these terrorists, and they end up flying the plane into the ground. And you can go visit where the plane dropped into the ground. I think it was headed for the White House or headed to the mall in the Washington, D.C. area there. So they're on the way to kill hundreds or thousands of people more. But there's a guy that gave his life for innocent people that he will never meet. And now I'm a guy years later talking about his sacrifice. But in the moment, he was ready to die because he knew what was needed to be done to save other people's lives. And my encouragement to you as I close this service, as I close up this whole forward series that I've done on Joshua is this. What are you doing with your dash? Stop living for money. Stop living for sexual encounters. Stop living for popularity. Those all have their place in life, but they are not the reason to live. The reason to live is for the glory of God. If you live for any other reason than that, at the end of your life, you will have wasted your life. You have one dash. What are you doing in your dash? What are you doing in your dash? Because what your answer to that is will directly dictate where your life heads.